Hi guys, welcome back to a Three Amigos video. We are here today at LSK Camera to film a very important episode. As you can see in front of us, we have a collection of 35mm lenses, which will blow your mind away basically. And today we want to take the opportunity to really talk about 35mm lenses. And we'll be covering the Summilux and the Summicron lenses. And today, as our very special guest, we have Anson. As you know, if some of you guys are into Leica gear, I'm sure you have read some of Anson's blogs or his videos. And yeah, he's a very knowledgeable guy into Leica, and also partially why I'm in this pit hole as well. So very happy to have him with us today. And again, thanks to Jason from LSK Camera to allowing us to really showcase all these lenses and to share some of our knowledge and some of our experience with using these lenses, and to hopefully give you some insight into the world of 35mm cameras and lenses, and hopefully it will benefit both of us in some way or another. So why don't we start with the Summicron lineup, and then we'll go to the Summilux lineup afterwards. And then we'll go in a chronological order, I think, just to make things easy. So let's start with the Summicron version 1. You want to hit us off?
Yeah. So there are three different versions here. You can see that the first one is the Summicron 35 version 1. It's the first Summicron released by Leica. And there are three versions, one with a goggle, and the second one is called Made in Canada version, and the last one is made in Germany. So what are the differences? In a very high level, the goggle one can close focus at 0.65 meter, whereas normal lenses like the M2 version, we call it, because without a goggle, made in Canada and also Germany, their minimum focus distance is only 0.7 meter. Yeah, that's major differences. For the M3 versions, you can use it on the M3 camera. It's specifically designed for the M3 cameras without the 35mm frame line.
So the version 1 Summicron is what is commonly known as the 8 elements, all right? And it's a very sought after vintage lens. Obviously the prices for these 8 elements have risen through the roof over the past couple years. And there's about a 10-year production line. And I think we estimate there's around 36,000 of these units that were being produced. And so, you know, you've used the 8 elements quite extensively. Personally, I haven't used it, but I know you're a big fan of the 8 elements. Can you sort of talk us, about your experience of using 8 elements, describe what the photos are like, and what do you think of it?
So at first I thought it's just something like a hype, online saying that 8 elements is the best, mount other Summicron lenses. But of course, there are different characters on each version. Like version 1, 6 elements, 7 elements, they have all distinct characters. But what's so special about version 1 is the black and white tone. It has relatively low contrast. So if I use it, I'll pair with different black and white film, and it gives you low contrast. So it stands out the tonality in different range. So when you print in a dark room, it gives you really rich and nice details in terms of the performance.
So moving on, we sort of transition on to what we call the version 2 Summicron. And this is what is known as the 6 elements. So the 6 elements also had about a 10-year sort of run. Now, we often group the Summicron version 2 and version 3 together as the 6 elements. And there are, I think, very minor differences in terms of the optical quality. But the main difference is that with the version 3, there will be a sort of screw-on lens filter that you can use. So that will be one of the sort of minor differences between version 2 and version 3. And what do you think of the version 2? Like,
honestly, I haven't tried version 3 myself or version 2. But what I know about or what I read online about 6 elements is if you have more elements, you have lower contrast. If you have less elements, you have higher contrast. So that's how I differentiate, 6 elements, 7 elements, and 8 elements, depends on my taste.
Now, I think if you actually look on vintage Leica lenses prices, if you compare the 6, 7, 8 elements, you'll find that the 6 elements is probably the cheapest amongst the three. Well, that's also partially because the 8 elements and the 7 elements, they both have they're very sought after in the secondary market nowadays. So I would say if you're looking for a vintage lens, and budget is one of your main concerns, I would highly recommend the 6 elements. I think it's something that is quite often overlooked. So I think the 6 elements pose as a very good sort of entry level into the sort of vintage sort of Leica market. But otherwise, you'll find there's quite an abundance of these available on the market online, and so it's a candidate definitely worth considering as well.
Yeah, definitely the best and most I would say budget option for you to start with all the Summicron lenses. Maybe later on you upgrade to version 1 or version 3 or 4.
All right, so let's move on to version 4. Now, version 4 is a lens that is of very hot debate, I would say, and we will often refer to version 4 as the king of bokeh.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually quite interesting how this name sort of arises.
Yeah.
So are you aware of the backstory of how the sort of king of bokeh sort of came about?
I think I've got the reason why they call it Big King of Bokeh, but it's the uniform kind of bokeh that it performs like a fish scale. It's really attractive and pleasant to what people look into their eyes when they see the photos.
So I did a bit of sort of researching into the background, and apparently it was actually done, this King of Bokeh sort of name came from a magazine reviewer. I think it was called Mike Johnston, and in his sort of magazine review of this lens, he called it the King of Bokeh. And for some reason, that name just caught up, and everyone just started calling it the King of Bokeh, which is quite interesting, I guess, how one reviewer just sort of dictates, and that's what the legacy of this lens has been built upon. Now, how would you sort of compare the optical quality, compared to the 6 elements and the 8 elements?
I think you have to think about what kind of mediums you want to shoot. If you want to shoot filmed or digital, color film or black and white film. So for version 4 or version 3, I would recommend more to shoot with color film. For version 3, probably maybe some people like high contrast black and white. Then I'll definitely recommend version 3 because it's cheaper. You get more high contrast black and white tone if you want nice silhouette or high contrast dynamic range. And then version 3 is a good option. I've shot a lot in Cuba with the version 4, and I would say it's very good standard Summicron. Why I say so is it depends on the serial numbers. If you go to a later serial numbers like Canada or late German version, it gives you much more solid, less glow in terms of wide open. It just gives you a very good confidence when you shoot this lens as an everyday lens.
Now, this version 4 Summicron had a very long production run, over almost 20 years, and there's more than 50,000 copies of these lenses out there. And there's also a lot of debate between sort of Germany made and Canada made. And I was wondering, do you have any insight? I'm sure you've done extensive research into this, and what are your thoughts on that?
So I've read a lot online about debating German or Canada versions. Honestly, the difference is very minimal, to be honest, very minimal. But I would say there would be certain tone difference on film only, but it's absolutely very minimal to observe. But I would recommend choosing the right serial numbers to get what kind of image that you want to get.
Now, I've also had the German-made version, and it's actually, I think, the only Leica lens that I've bought and sold. And as you know, I do love vintage lenses as well, but I think my experience was because there was so much hype behind the lens, and so it's a great lens. But I think I was a little bit underwhelmed when I used the lens, and it's interesting how the sort of King of Bokeh name comes not because you're meant to be using it at f2. I think when the reviewer actually was describing the bokeh, actually the sort of optimal point was actually at 5.6. So it's quite a misnomer, I would say, in a way. And I think you can be sort of easily sort of thrown off by that point. But I think when I bought the lens and that was my experience, then I think I wasn't actually aware of the background story of how this happened. So I think I gave it not a very fair assessment. But I would say, even amongst my friends who shoot, I would say probably the most common, most easily accepted sort of lens. And I think because it's such a lens that is so sought after and so such a high production volume that you can't go wrong with buying this lens, as in you can easily sort of trade in and trade out this lens. And I would highly recommend it as a vintage lens if you were sort of wanting to shoot a bit of black and white, a bit of color, and sort of one vintage dual all sort of lens. I would say the 7 Elements is probably one of the best ones to get.
The 7 Elements is my first ever Leica lens. And I agree what Stanton has said. I was a bit overwhelmed by the big name of King of Bokeh. So when I received the lens, I tested it out, and I thought I expected something more with the lens. But it has its own charm, of course. And later on, when I learned how good this lens is if you shoot other brands in the same period of time, then you definitely know how good this lens is. I was a little bit foolish because I was attracted by the square hood. Because I was a big fan of the square hood, so the version 4 square hood and also the expanded square hood. These are the best design during that period.
Now, I think we do have to, while we're making all these comments on the lenses, we do have to acknowledge that, I mean, we're spanning a sort of 70-year sort of production run over here, which I think is also one of the most attractive points of shooting with Leica M bodies, that you have the ability to shoot both vintage glass and modern glass, and to choose what you would see as the right tool to shoot the photos that you want to achieve the character and effect that you would like to shoot. So it has to be taken into the context that was taken at that time, which is the 1970s and 1980s. So definitely a very groundbreaking revolution for those times. And you also have to consider how small these lenses are.
Very compact.
Very compact, and they can fit almost in a big jacket pocket. These are incredible lenses to use, and still much smaller, much lighter than a lot of modern lenses, and definitely give a very unique rendering for that as well.
And a side note is when you look at version 1, version 2 or 3 to version 4, and the later on versions, you can see the material change. The first version is, I would say, when you first start something, you give the best, right? The metal case, lens barrel, infinity lock, it got everything on it. And later on, they kind of reduce, maybe adjust the costing. You can see the plastic case and the materials, of course, changed. A plastic hood and also focusing tabs.
Another one of the common sort of comments that you'll see online with the version 4 is that the build quality is subpar, perhaps, compared to the version 1s, I think, just because they were so well built. So I think there were some issues with some plastic within the lens, and it's not uncommon for people to have part of it like sort of fall out, actually. So do pay attention, to when you're buying a version 4, that you really need to know how to inspect your glass and know how to inspect a lens. But that's also why it's important to buy from reputable resellers, like stores like this, right?
LSK,
So anyway, so again, so version 1, 2, 3, 4, very, very classic Leica glass, and so definitely, you would be very happy with any of these versions. But we're really sort of nitpicking minor differences between them otherwise. All right, so we move on from the sort of more vintage into the slightly more modern era, into the version 5. And so we move into the sort of the realm of aspherical lenses. So we have, can you tell us what sort of aspherical versions we have here?
So we have the first one is the Hermes, correct my pronunciation, the limited edition. The difference that Jason told me is the tab. The tab is in metal versus the normal version is in plastic, and it doesn't have a unique. It has its own unique serial numbers. So this lens is 11/500. So the build quality is of course, brass, very heavy. Like, what is that? Yeah.
It's really solid. This feels like a really nice chunk of metal.
Yeah. And then we also have the same version, but in titanium. It's not made with titanium. It should be coated with titanium. Yeah. And then this one is the black chrome version. Obviously, I think it's all built with brass, so it's very heavy. Yeah, but it depends on the taste. I find black chrome is very, very beautiful.
So if you could pick one out of the three. So first of all, these are three very rare Summicron lenses to begin with. But if you could pick, one of the three, which one would be your favorite? If money was no option.
I'll get the silver one.
I'll probably go for the chrome one. The chrome one is, I think we'll get some close down shots, but the finishing, like sort of the red over the black finishing.
Yeah,
is
the contrast.
Though. Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah. Okay, so how would you describe sort of the aspherical lenses compared to the vintage lenses?
Sharp.
Yeah.
Clinical. When you shoot, even when you shoot at wide open at f2, you get the clarity, the definition. It's very usable even at wide open compared with previous lenses. For version 1, if you shoot at f2, widest aperture, sometimes the image result will be a little bit glowy of the glow, like a glow on it. Yeah. For aspherical lenses, definitely if you stop down to 5.6, everything is very clear, like very sharp.
So I would say, so the version 5, the aspherical was sort of there's a 20-year production run from 1996 to 2016, and it also features sort of 7 elements in the glass. But I think with the aspherical elements involved, then you're definitely getting a much more modern look. Very high contrast, very vibrant colors, sharpness throughout the frame, even at f2. So if you're looking for something for your digital sensor that you want to achieve, close to clinical perfection, I think that aspherical version 5 is the one to go. Now, there is a version 2 of the aspherical, which we don't have here, but there's just some minor differences in terms of the construction, which, for example, is the hood.
Yeah, the hood.
The hood design. So one is a sort of screw-on
hood. Yeah.
Yeah, and one is a sort of like a clip, sort of clip-on hood. And again, I haven't compared the versions side by side, but according to some reviews online, the version 6 is again a little bit sharper than the previous generation, and obviously the colors and everything will pop a bit more. So apparently it has to do with sort of the gradual sort of development towards more high megapixel sensors. So therefore, just the need to create lenses that are able to sort of have enough resolution for these sensors in general. So now the last or the most modern Summicron is a lens that we both own. Yeah. Which you poisoned me into. What is it?
The APO Summicron 35 f2 aspherical lens. It has 3 different things inside this lens. First is APO graded, which means that it's very well corrected in terms of the color corrections. It has floating elements, so when you shoot at different apertures, it's all corrected to give you the best and most accurate focusing experience. And the third bit is aspherical. All the elements are aspherically made so that all the lights will be hit the right and the same spot to give you the sharpness.
Yeah, so we did recently post a video. I did a short review on my thoughts with the APO. And the APO is basically 110% perfection, basically. I mean, you shoot it wide open at f2 and not that we should pixel peep, but when you put it on a computer and you zoom into 200% of the corners, it blows your mind away. You can see there's so much detail in the photo. Obviously, the APO compared to the even version 2 aspherical, it's much more expensive. probably double or triple
Yeah.
the price. But I think one of the things that I think is often overlooked is I really enjoy the close focusing.
Yeah, me too.
Although you can only enjoy the sort of close focusing on a digital sensor, but I think the design of the recent sort of Leica lenses in terms of maximizing the close focusing has been designed quite well. So when you actually focus the lens, there's a little nudge that you will
Yeah.
feel, and then you know that um, because the close focusing from 0.7 meters and below that, you actually can't couple it on the rangefinder. So you definitely have to rely on the live view or on a VisoFlex. But I think it just improves the sort of versatility of the lens a lot. So for example, I actually considered buying the 50 APO as well. But then because of the close focusing of the 35 APO, it's sort of made me wonder whether or not I really need to, like, sort of this lens sort of does both things. It almost, now again, it's not functioning like a 50, but because you get the close focusing, it almost allows you to have those sort of capabilities, which I think is something really enjoyed when you're traveling. You don't want to carry so many lenses, and that close focusing is quite a game changer, I would say.
Maybe you can consider the Summilux 51.4 because it's also APO graded with close focusing.
Okay, so we'll talk about 50 in the next episode. If you guys enjoy this sort of format, let us know, and we'll plan our next video on the 50. All right. Okay, so I think that's a good coverage of the Summicrons. All right, and we move on to the Summiluxes. All right.
Sure.
So again, moving on to the first Summilux that we have here is the steel rim. Now, the steel rim is a lens that is very close to Anson's heart. He has tested extensively all the different serial numbers, versions, and goggle, non-goggle. So I will leave this part to him.
So there are multiple versions of the steel rim, kind of similar to the Summicron we mentioned earlier. It has the M3 versions, which will be, you can use it on the M3 camera to show you the 35mm frame line, like this. And then it also have the M2 version, which today we don't have it in here. Its minimum focusing is only 1 meter. So compare that Summicron we talk about, you get the advantage of 0.7 meter. But however, in Summilux, I guess it's because of they want to optimize the best result, right? And so for the M2 version, minimum focusing is only 1 meter. For me, minimum focusing distance is a big concern because that's how I can tell and how close that I can shoot with my subjects and scene.
Because I think shooting 0.7 meter and 1 meter is a big difference in terms of, like, if you were shooting portraits, environmental portraits, like 0.7 and 1 meter is the difference between like a whole body and half body sort of portrait. So it does make a big difference. Now, that being said, you did something special to your steel rim, right?
So what I did, not actually me, but the previous owner of the lens cut the goggle. Because if you want to remove the goggle, you have to remove the whole part and then trim along the barrel, and then have a professional to recalibrate the focusing from 0.65 all the way to infinity for you. So my lens is that case, removed the goggle and have it all calibrated. And I think previously Stanton asked me about what's so special about the steel rim, right? And I think what the first term that you will relate is the Leica glow, the glow. For me, the Leica glow is a love and hate relationship. Sometimes I want characters with interesting glow, but sometimes I hate glow. I want something to be very clean and wide open. So it depends on your taste.
I think, I mean, the steel rim is definitely one of the most sort of, again, sought after and collectible Summiluxes available. Again, because it's the version 1, it is very well built. And at the same time, because the version 1 didn't have a very long production run, so I think it was only run for about 5 years. And supposedly there are about 7,000 steel rims across the 4 different versions that you'll find. Now, there are more rare ones, like the sort of black chrome versions and things like that, but those are fetching sort of astronomical prices. But you know, I would say the steel rim is probably the one lens that sort of epitomizes what we call the Leica glow. I think the ability to be able to shoot wide open and to have this what we call the Chinese what we refer to as holy light. I think is very unique, and it's a love-hate relationship. I think some people like it, some people don't. But if you were to shoot something, for example, like portraits, then because of its character, the softness, it's a very appealing characteristic when shooting, because it makes the skin look really nice and everything. So that's why even the wives, you know, the girlfriends, you know, they love this lens a lot, because it makes them. It's almost like adding a filter on for them already without any post-processing so they need it.
Just like adding a black pro mist filter on the lens.
Yeah. So something quite unique about the steel rim that you mentioned is the hood design as well. Again, a very beautifully made hood, but even the hood itself is the cost of some lenses already. So unfortunately, this is something that is quite expensive to buy, so don't lose it in case you have the hood.
If you and also if you have a chance to look at the hood itself in the interior of how it's built, it's so clever that how they built some clip-on mechanism. You know, imagine back in those days, there's no CNC tooling, there's no such a computer-guided operations. How they think of attaching a hood on the lens is very futuristic, to be honest.
And I guess the last thing is the crazy thing about these old lenses is that it has this Leica glow when you shoot it wide open, but then you can stop it down and it becomes a very sharp lens. So it's sort of like a one lens, but has sort of two characters. So that's probably one of the most unique things about the steel rim.
And I'll describe steel rim when you shoot at 1.4. It has very unique outward kind of airy bokeh. But if you stop down in the f2, it kind of reminds me of the Summicron version 1. And if you stop down to 5.6, it's actually like a Summicron version 4. It has that kind of high contrast and just serve for the purpose.
Yeah, so Summilux the steel rim is still on the top of my list, and when I save up enough, then I will get Jason to get me a good copy. But yeah, definitely one of the most holy grail ones, I think, for most Leica users out there. Now, moving on to version 2, or what we call the Pre Aspherical. So what do we have here?
We have Canada-made Pre Aspherical lens. Then it also have a German version that we don't have today, but we have a titanium version. But before we talk about the Pre Aspherical, there's actually a transition version, which is called the Infinity Lock. This lens, it has been in the forum for a long time. It doesn't appear so often. So I learned about this, that it has similar character as the steel rim, the Leica glow, the sharpness, everything. And I've even personally compared the steel rim with the Infinity Lock version. It's slightly sharper. And with the M2 version, which is without a goggle, the minimum focusing distance is 0.85, which is not commonly known to people, because normally the Pre-Aspherical version 2, the minimum focusing is only 1 meter. But for this, without goggle, 0.85, with the similar character of the steel rim. So you can consider that it's much more budget friendly. Of course, it's still
all relative terms. All relative terms. But I think do pay attention, because again, you need to you have to do your research when it comes to buying vintage lenses. You need to know the right serial numbers so again, a very interesting phase of Leica, because again, apparently during this sort of transition period, they wanted to build the new lens, but they still probably maybe had a lot of leftover material from the previous productions. So you can sort of find the characters from the previous version, but built in the sort of more modern design. And So yeah, again, distinctively would be the sort of infinity lock that's there. Now the version 2 Pre Aspherical had one of the longest production runs for Leica, and basically it was around for almost 30 years, I think. And we have, as we mentioned, we have the German version and the Canadian version, and the Canadian version is actually the first lens that I bought myself. That was the first Leica lens that I used, and I would describe it as super glowy, very, very glowy. At that time, because the first Leica camera I bought was actually the Leica M6, and then so I actually had no idea how it performed on a digital sensor, so I actually attached it on a converter to a Nikon body, and I had no experience in using vintage lenses before. Attached it on a Nikon Z7, and you know, I was looking at the EVF, and I was blown away by how soft it was. It was basically like putting a layer of Vaseline in front of a lens. So definitely, it's again, I would say a very love-hate relationship. It's not for everyone. Some people would say that the glow or the softness of the version 2 is actually even more than the steel rim. So again, you know, there is a lens for everyone's likings. You know, if you want super soft, then I would say version 2 Pre Aspherical. But if you're looking for something a bit sharper, less glowy, then the steel rim is what fits. But I would say, when I learned more about the steel rim, I would say that the version 2 is a pretty good alternative. I will call it my poor man's steel rim. And so, otherwise, I still love the lens. It's so small. It's such a good everyday carry. And again, when you stop down, it sharpens up a lot. And I do love how the pictures appear on film, especially. You get a very, very soft and very unique character to it as well. So again, you'll find a lot of copies of this because it had a very long production run. So I would say also a very good entry point if you're looking in. Now, how do you sort of debate between, you know, a version 2, a Summicron and Summilux? Because, you know, they're both 35 millimeters, but one f1.4, one f2. So how would you choose? Like,
personally, I have a soft spot, which is bokeh, the out focus area. That's why I upgraded my first lens, which is the version 4 Kano bokeh, to Pre Aspherical, just like the lens that you got first version Canada. And if I have to choose, they have different purpose. I would say f2 Summicron lenses are very good for documentary purposes. If you want something that is standard, ordinary, you know that it doesn't give you funky look at wide open. I'll vote for the Summicron. And also the compactness. If you have to carry it all the day, if you don't have other, you know, second or third option backup lenses, I think Summicron do the jobs really well. But if you need to shoot at night, let's say, because why they make 1.4 or f2 lenses is because of the film era, right? Low speed, high speed, or medium speed filmed, each aperture stop matters, right? And I should film a lot, and definitely 1.4 is something useful for me at night.
So I would say that if you're mainly shooting digital, then actually f2 and f1.4 is not going to be a deal breaker because we're so spoiled with the ISO capabilities of the cameras nowadays. But for film, then again, I am also a sucker for 1.4, just because I think, you know, when I'm shooting at f1.4, I do enjoy having that bit of surprise. So I think that 1.4 definitely gives that sort of wow factor into it. Again, it's a love-hate relationship. Some people like it, some people don't. But again, I do love what comes out of it. It's like getting your film prints. It's a game changer, I think, with the 1.4s. So moving on from the sort of Pre Aspherical, we move on to a very unique lens. What is this?
This is the double aspherical lens, the 35 1.4 Summilux, and I think this is also a very famous lens. that I think Stanton, maybe you want to talk about this.
So now, when Leica had a 30-year production run with the Pre Aspherical, they wanted to really showcase the best lens that they had. So back in I think it was around 1990 when they created the double aspherical. Now, this is the only sort of double aspherical lens in the 35 millimeter lineup. And apparently this lens was, again, made by hand by the artisans at the time. So it was a very difficult lens to make. But because of its double aspherical, the colors that you get, the contrast, the saturation is out of this world. And as a disclosure, did purchase this lens recently, and I will make a review very shortly. But from the limited photos and opportunities that I have done so far, it's in a world of its own. Like, I actually almost have to tone back the contrast because it's just so rich in colors. Now, the interesting thing is that the first time I actually came to contact with this lens was actually when I wasn't even into Leica shooting at the time. So I was at this sort of event, I think it was like 5-6 years ago. And there were some Leica shooters at this event, and some guy just handed me his double aspherical and said, "Oh, attach it to your camera and see what you think." So I took some photos for a fashion thing outdoors, and when I went home to look at the photos, I was like, wow, the photos blew away. So it left me a very strong impression because it was actually the first Leica lens I ever used, even though it was not a Leica sensor. So it always left a very strong impression, and that seed was planted from 5, 6, 7 years ago. And incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to acquire one. But yeah, it is a very unique lens. And because it's so rare, because it's very hard to make, there's estimated maybe about 1,000 to maybe 2,000 copies. Now, apparently there were 3,000 serial numbers reserved for this lens, but actually Leica, I think, gave up on the last batch of lenses because it was too hard to make. So that's what I read the story to be. But inherently, the price tag is for the collectability, I would say, as with the steel rim and everything. But again, because of its scarcity, it's definitely a very unique lens to try, and I'm sure you would enjoy using it as well.
I've tried it once, borrowed one copy from my friend, and I shot a roll of, I forgot, Profia or Velvia. The definition and the 3D pop is definitely memorizing.
Yeah. Like, I haven't shot them side by side, but I also own the FLE, and I would argue probably even higher contrast and character on the double aspherical compared to a modern lens. And this is a lens that's almost 30 years older. So very interesting lens. I've yet to try it on film as well, but that'll definitely be in our next lens review. So remember to subscribe and pay attention to some of our upcoming sort of videos. But yeah, definitely a very unique lens with a very unique rendering.
This lens is a lens that I've been avoiding to try. Honestly,
because you can't let it go. But Jason has a very good copy here, so you can give it a try later, and I'm sure you will think about it. Tonight. All right. So moving on from the double aspherical, we go on to the version
Pre FLE.
Pre FLE. So the Pre FLE is actually a lens that you've used quite extensively as well, right? I've never used it, so. Hit us away.
So let's talk about this lens. How we remember this is back in 10 years ago, pre-FLE is not a very common term yet. So we call it 11874, the code name of model number of this lens. There's a downside about this lens is the focus shift. So if you stop down to 2.8, when you focus at 1.4, the focus point will shift slightly backward or front, depends on your copy. But that's why I put up some information on my blog. And so if you are looking for this lens, try to look for certain serial numbers that should be corrected, or I would say not 100% corrected, but less obvious. But I would describe this lens a very undervalued lens in this market right now, because it has it bridged the kind of modern and film era with this lens. It doesn't have that sharpness with the FLE, which is well corrected, very clinical, very sharp, very modern. But this lens also has its own charm. When you shoot at wide open, it has some softness, but not extreme severe glow like the still rim. So it's a very pleasant and nice lens to own and shoot. And it has the black version, titanium. We don't have it today, but it also have a very nice silver made in bronze version. Yeah.
So yeah, I think the pictures that you get from this will definitely be a lot smoother. I mean, you get a much more modern rendering, I think, compared to the sort of other pre-aspherical versions. And it does come in a very nice hood as well. I think that definitely is up your alleyway as well. So then we have the transition into the sort of more modern FLE version, which is the 11663.
Yeah.
So we have a very special version here today as well.
This one is a limited edition, right? And the FLE lens is also the first lens that I dream to own, because when I first started Leica, it's very hard to get a copy during that time.
So these were off the shelves for months at the time. So you actually had to pay a premium on the secondary market to get it when it was released.
So when I finally save up enough money to buy the FLE, it's very rewarding. I brought this lens with me to Cuba. Of course, it's very clinical and sharp, like what I mentioned, but it has very good sharpness, contrast. It's a very good lens to use on all purpose.
I think the Summilux, when it was released, it was one of the sharpest modern 35 lenses available, and it was also the first sort of modern Leica lens that I bought. And at that time, when I put it on the M10 as well as put a roll of film through it, the images that you get, like the out of focus areas, the bokeh, the color, is just dreamy. Like it's really dreamy, but it's sort of a different dreamy when you compare it to the sort of older versions, in that it's very in your face dreamy, if that sort of makes sense. Like the colors like just pop, and like there's like no photo editing that's required. With the FLE, there is actually a version 1 and version 2. Now the differences between that is that you have the introduction of the minimum focusing distance. So again, I think it's down to 0.4 meters, and it has an inbuilt hood. It has that little sliding hood. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of the sliding hood. I do enjoy the sort of original hood on the previous version. Another slight difference in the construction is that one was 9 aperture blades, and this one is 11 aperture blades. So you're supposed to get cleaner and smoother bokeh as well. But I would say probably quite marginal, realistically. So if you're in for the sort of more close focusing distance, I think that's worth the sort of difference. But in terms of image quality and rendering, I would say pretty similar. So I do enjoy the version 1. And if you have the version 1, I would say no sort of real urgency to upgrade, unless the close focusing distance is something that you will consider as well. All right. So besides, now, before we talk about, why don't we give sort of some, I do have some questions for you in terms of like, we've talked about a lot of lenses, from modern and vintage and Summilux, Summicron, but I think if you were to sort of sum up this video in a nutshell in terms of comparing vintage lenses and modern lenses, how would you sum it up?
Wow.
How would you sum up your, so many years of experience in collecting and using these sort of lenses?
I would say there's no definition or definite answer to a single lens that's the best or the worst. It depends on your mood, to be honest, and also when you age and when you first start Leica, what you expect and what you go into this dark hole even further, roam around a little bit, your taste change. and also I think meet more people like Stanton and other people. We shoot with different styles, right? We learn from each other and share, and then we'll like something else. So it really depends on whether you want to go for certain extreme glow that it will be maybe a very good artistic look that for you to do creative work, or if you are a journalist that you want something that's solid to do documentary photographs, that will be maybe the FLE Summilux.
Yeah. So I would say, yeah, again, to sum up, is like, I guess vintage lenses would have a very soft rendering, very characteristic. And if that's the sort of creative medium that you want, then go for those vintage lenses. But you need to accept that with vintage lenses, there are obviously different build qualities. There are obviously problems with the lens conditions as well. So you do need to sort of know what you're looking for when you're buying these lenses, because there are the conditions of these vintage lenses can really vary a lot, and that would affect the price and various other issues. Now, I would say at the end of the day, lenses, as much as we enjoy buying different lenses, I often stress in the channel that, like, buying a new lens won't make you a better photographer. I'm gonna get shot for saying that. but I think it's sort of like lenses are like a painter's paintbrush. So just because you get a nicer paintbrush doesn't mean you will shoot better photos. So at the end of the day, the important thing is to shoot more and to understand your lenses more, because you could have an entire collection of lenses, or you can have one lens, and one lens will serve you everything. One lens will suffice as well. So obviously there's a joy in collecting and using these lenses as well. But at the end of the day, it comes down to just enjoying and shooting the lenses, really. Another thing that I think a lot of viewers will be interested to know is, like, what are the things to look for, or what are some tips when it comes to buying lenses?
I think first you need to understand price point. There are meaning between the lowest and mid and high points, which is the conditions. And if you look at the lens, I think quickly what you can tell is it should be clear, like your window. That's the standard. If you can see that some sort of glow or non-clarity, something like a haze that we would describe it, then definitely it has to be surfaced, or sometimes it's not 100% be able to remove that. So be careful and look for options available in the market based on the price point, and check with the sellers. Briefly, just use an iPhone flashlight to do a flashlight test, and consult people whether this lens is good or not, and ask for more photographs to just cross-check.
Yeah. So again, I would say, even for me, like, compared to Anson, I'm still relatively new to this field. So again, for me, like, I think it really comes down to finding reputable sellers. Yes, sellers, you do pay a little bit more, but I think because you're already paying so much for these lenses, then it's worth it to have that sort of guarantee and to have that contact. And I think it's just that there's a lot of ease of mind when you're buying from a reputable seller. So do your background checks, do your everything. But I would say in general, when it comes to sort of vintage lenses, I would say for modern lenses, I think the purchasing process is a lot easier, just because there's a lot less use, a lot of scuffs on them. But I think for a lot of older lenses, because they're older coatings, so they've probably been cleaned, and sometimes they may not be cleaned by the right people, so they can be damaged quite easily as well. So I think you do need to sort of, I would say, do your homework when it comes to these things. But I think that's also part of the fun. Part of the fun is sort of learning the process of how to appreciate and sort of examine these lenses as well. But otherwise, I would say we can call it a day. Again, Jason, for letting all these amazing lenses. Is really eye candy for Anson and I to look at all these amazing lenses. And we hope you guys have learned something from this episode. If you guys have any suggestions on what videos you want to know in the future, do let us know down in the comments below. You can see there's an array of things that we can sort of go through as well. But do let us know what you want to learn more about, or if you have any questions then let us know down in the comment section below. Now, we are going to take some test photos of these lenses, and then we will post them on the link down below. And so after looking at these photos, do let us know your thoughts. And we look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. And again, Anson, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. I've learned a lot from your blog as well, so do check it out down in the description below. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time again. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.